I am really excited to hear a sample of the book that you brought today, Miss Mason's Secret, Baron.
Mhm. Yes.
What should we know about the story?
So it's the second of my Troublemakers trilogy. The first one is Miss Thornfield's Daring Bargain. This one focuses on Regina. Her dad's a military man. Her parents got married. It was one of those military marriages in India. So her mother is Marathi and her father is English. And at some point, the father manages to arrange a marriage between his daughter and Barony. And what he manages to do is put in a marriage contract that says that the engagement is between her daughter and the Baron of Stockholm. So it is not to a particular person, it is to the title. So
Mm.
he managed to set up this contract in India when she was around 12 years, like 12, 13 years old. So from that moment on, her family sort of moves to moves to England, and she's been a baroness in training since that time. However, what's been happening is the heirs keep dying. So Regina, from the time that she was engaged to now, they've been like three or four fiancés. So it's sort of spiraled, not quite out of control, but it's spiraled just a little bit. And she's sort of waiting now for this person who inherits this title to come and execute this contract and marry her and make her a baroness so she could move on with her life. So that's that's the setup for her. And we have Leo, who is honestly he's just trying to mind his business, but he's gotten sort of roped in to this other barony that he just discovered that he's sort of a lost heir to this barony, and he's actually the last of this line. And while he's trying to figure out whether he wants to even deal with that drama and take on that kind of a legacy, he's sort of faced with Regina. And now he's like, maybe, maybe I could, maybe it could be a good idea, kind of situation
Awesome.
with them.
All right. Well, I'm excited to hear the sample.
Chapter 4, Her Majesty's Theatre, Haymarket, London, 1852. It had been over a year since Regina had been to the theatre. In the previous year, Ada's trouble had resulted in Regina's season being cut short. After their adventure to Gretna Green, her parents had snatched her back to the country, where she was meant to wait until her fiancé returned. They'd only returned to London this season in anticipation of her fiancé's arrival, which they now knew wouldn't happen. Not until they knew who the new one would be. An evening with Ellie, while their parents grew more closely acquainted, opened up so many new possibilities. She didn't know why they hadn't done this before. She knew that Ellie and Ada had managed to spend more time together because their families were less restrictive, unlike her parents. She had only ever wanted to be Ellie's friend and had never truly considered using her father as a connection to better her own standing. But now she wondered how much of her life over the past years could have been different. In her excitement, she'd chosen one of the dresses she'd managed to get past her mother, a gown of rich cerulean silk with a godipati of gold and silver in a floral motif along the neckline and in a broad border at the hem of each blouse. It was an indulgence, like her favorite bonnet, something that showed a little more of who she was, or perhaps who she wanted to be, who she hoped she would be after all was said and done. The excitement she felt had even extended to her mother, who had forgotten for the first time in Regina's life check what Regina was wearing before they had arrived at the theatre. Regina had left her cloak on until the last minute, when she had been forced to remove it at the theatre in full view of her mother's eagle eye had gone directly to the unmistakably Indian design. But before she could speak, the Viscount had commented on it in glowing terms. Regina couldn't be sure it was a victory, but for the moment at least, there wasn't anything to be done about it. If enough positive feedback got to her mother, perhaps Regina would be able to wear more of these designs this season. It would be a kind of freedom, even if much of her life was still decided. Tonight, she wouldn't worry about that. Tonight, she would enjoy being able to wear this dress and relish the opera with her friend. Her eyes drifted over the assembly of patrons around her. Some were familiar, most were not. She'd been in this theater once before, but never in an area like this. These gilt seats were upholstered in red velvet, and this performance was the premiere of the latest opera by Giuseppe Verdi. What is this one about, Ellie? She asked. Well, I believe it was based on a book by Alexandre Dumas' son, La Dame aux Camélias. Have you read it? No. It's about a fallen woman, Violetta, who finds love too late. Sad, but probably realistic. Indeed, but the music should be good. Thank goodness for those Italian lessons, eh? Regina joked, nudging Ellie with her elbow. If only Ada was here, it would be a perfect evening, indeed. Although she's likely already seen it. That is very true. At this point, when she returns, we will be able to discuss it with her instead of staring like country bumpkins. The lights flickered and they turned their attention to the stage. As Elodia predicted, the music was wonderful, but what struck Regina the most was Violetta's quandary between freedom and love. The idea that being caught between what seemed to serve her best and what her heart cried out for once she tasted it. She heard Elodia gasp beside her and turned to her. What is it, Ellie? He's here, she whispered, her gloved hands clenched in her lap, her eyes fixed across from their seat one row down. When she saw the object of her focus, her own breath caught in her throat. There, in the dim light of the torches, sat Ada's brother, Mr. Thornfield, and beside him was Mr. Kingston. His gaze was fixed on the stage, his brow furrowed in concentration as he leaned on the armrest of his chair, one strong hand covering his full mouth. Every time she saw him, she was struck anew by how handsome he was, and how attractive every part of him was to her. How much she liked the way he looked at her, the way he appreciated her as she was. Could she find that with the man she was destined to marry? Was it possible that the white man who would no doubt inherit the barony, and her along with it, would see her as a boon instead of a burden? On the stage, Alfredo's voice rang out, reminding the heroine of her opportunity to taste what she'd never experienced before, with a person of pure heart and intention. Violetta's voice faltered as the ache of longing sprang to life, and in Regina's own heart, a treacherous seed of yearning took root. She forced herself to look down at her hands and then back to the stage. She tried to focus on understanding the Italian instead of recalling every detail of every encounter she'd ever had with Leo Kingston. Oh, Elodia murmured, and Regina glanced over in time to see her nod in Mr. Thornfield's direction. He returned the gesture to her and Regina, and she glanced at Mr. Kingston, see those eyes fixed on her, her heart thudding in her chest at the impact of the stare. He nodded as well before returning his attention to the stage. Could she be disappointed? Did it make sense? He owed her nothing. They'd met only twice before. What had she hoped for? Her heart was thumping away in her chest. She could feel his gaze on her skin, and the tingling in her belly moved lower, forcing her to press her legs together. It was terrifying and exhilarating to have his interest, even if it was only polite. It was maddening to have her body react in such a way to someone she knew full well she couldn't have. Someone who had no interest in her outside of passing acquaintance. The first half ended, and the curtain mercifully closed as the audience broke into scattered applause. Oh, they've left, Elodia said. What? Regina's head snapped up to see the empty seat Mr. Kingston had once sat in. She wasn't disappointed. She wasn't. She didn't know the man for the love of Christ. Perhaps it was a mercy. The last thing she needed was more distraction. Then Elodia stiffened behind her. Oh Lord, he's coming over Gigi. Regina's head snapped up, her body went cold with shock. What? Good evening, gentlemen, Elodia said with a bright smile. Papa, you remember Mr. Kingston and of course Mr. Thornfield? Of course. Good evening, gentlemen, Lord Melbrook said. Mr. Thornfield, you must already be familiar with my guest. But Mr. Kingston, allow me to introduce Captain and Mrs. Mason, and their eldest daughter, Miss Regina Mason. Good evening to you all, he said, giving them a smart bow. Mr. Kingston, I believe I saw you on the platform that day last year, did I not? Captain Mason said with a curious head tilt. Your father remembered him? Of course the father remembered him. The man had a mind like a steel trap. I believe so, but it was hardly a formal introduction by any means. No, more like guerrilla warfare. Mr. Kingston pressed his lips together as if fighting back a smile. As you say, sir. Her father turned to her mother. Mr. Kingston was instrumental in safeguarding Mr. Thornfield's life and the former Miss Thornfield's dignity. Yes, he was, Mr. Thornfield confirmed. He was also the reason my Ellie was returned to me so quickly when she was taken last year, the Viscount added with a nod of admiration. It seems like more than one person is indebted to you, Mr. Kingston, Regina's mother said. That is true, but none are present here. What I did was in the service of a friend. How gallant of you. Her expression seemed almost convinced, but Regina knew better than to read anything more into it. Do you enjoy the opera, Mr. Kingston? Regina asked, hoping her voice sounded as steady as she imagined, even though her stomach was a mess of nerves. I do in general, Miss Mason. How do you find this one? Intriguing. I'm not one for romance in general, but this one isn't terrible. It was better to be honest. Her parents would certainly know the truth. A young woman who isn't a fan of romantic tales. How very peculiar, Mr. Thornfield said with clear amusement. She smiled. Yes, it would seem odd to him. But Regina had never been interested in hurting herself for the sake of curiosity. Romance would have no place in the life she was going to live, and she had no interest in tasting it even vicariously. I'm a peculiar sort of female. You're in good company tonight. My companion here is less than enthused himself. He cast a frustrated glance at Mr. Kingston. Oh? What faults do you find with it? She asked. Was he a kindred spirit? Is the subject matter too shocking? Eludia chimed in. Mr. Kingston shot an annoyed glance at his friend before chuckling and shaking his head. Regina's breath caught in her throat. That laugh. She was losing her mind. Well, I confess I much prefer comedies myself, he replied. How peculiar of you, Regina teased, and he crinkled his nose in mock protest. Perhaps. But I've dealt with enough tragedy in my line of work. When I pay to be entertained, I prefer a happy ending. Whereas I live for drama as an escape from mundane leisure, Richard joked. You do not believe that art should hold a mirror up to the world, Mr. Kingston? The Viscount asked. I have no objection to it in principle, but for myself I'd much rather laugh than cry. Especially in public, Ellie teased. And Mr. Thornfield snickered before wagging his finger and squinting at the ceiling in consideration. You make a fine point, Miss Hawthorne. Imagine spending all that time on your toilet only to ruin your hard work with a rogue opera. What a tragedy, she lamented with a grin. The futility. Oh dear. Are you in danger of a public emotional exhibition, Mr. Kingston? Regina asked, wondering how Elodia was able to speak so easily with Mr. Thornfield, a man she was clearly in love with. Mr. Kingston chuckled and shook his head. Not tonight, Miss Mason. I believe it's time to return to our seats to further witness the tragic futility. Such is always the way. I shall bid you all good night then, Mr. Thornfield said before bowing and leaving their box. Mr. Kingston followed suit, reaching her eyes for a moment before he left. And Regina returned the gesture, watching greedily as he strolled away with his friend. Even his walk was attractive. What on earth was this? Could it be mere attraction? Was it that powerful? He is a cheerful fellow, Mr. Mason commented. Who, Thornfield? He is rather, but don't let it fool you, Lord Malbrook replied. What do you mean by that, Papa? Eludia asked. Only that he's not as straightforward as he likes to appear. It was true. Ada's brother wielded his charm in a way that was calculated without being harmful. She didn't hold it against him. She had to do the same in her own way, far too often. She imagined Mr. Kingston's humility was another way to play to the crowd, in order to avoid too much scrutiny. How else could his refusal to accept credit for his actions the year before be explained? Few people are, Regina replied without thinking, as she watched him, and Mr. Kingston would take this. Oh? Captain Mason asked. Regina glanced over to see 4 pairs of eyes staring at her, 3 inquisitive and 1 knowing and wary. I only meant that it is the price of engaging in society, is it not? We none of us can be truly who we are all the time. I suppose that's true enough, the father replied. Indeed, Miss Mason said, watching Regina with cool consideration. Mr. Kingston is quite the hero. Regina met her stare evenly but said nothing. She knew. Somehow her mother knew who her mind had begun drifting towards. If her voice wavered, it would steal the carpet. He's a good sort, Elodia said. Very clever and discreet. A military man as well, by his account, Lord Melbrook added, Oh, which battalion? Captain Mason asked, his interest piqued. I didn't get that far into the introduction. Perhaps I can invite him to dinner next week and you can have the opportunity to ask. Very good, her father nodded with his typical cheerful grin. Regina turned to face the stage and forced herself to keep her eyes on the performance she was lucky to witness, and not on the man across from the box.